What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. You know what sucks almost as much as no steering? Slow steering. Now, it's not terrible, but the steering on the FJ40 is a little slow. It lacks in response. It's got plenty of power. It turns these 40s like nothing. I can do it with one finger, but it's a little slow. It's a little on the slow side. And I guess that's actually fairly common when you go through a hydro boost unit out to your steering, plus having a hydraulic ram on the cylinder for hydro assist. It kind of slows things down a little bit. Now, there is a couple potential issues with this system. One being the power steering pump just not being able to handle the flow that it needs with adding the hydro assist. We're going to attempt to fix that one today. Another one I've heard of a lot is the hydro boost unit kind of being a bottleneck or being a restriction because the fluid goes from the pump through the hydro boost unit first and then down to the power steering box, and then from the power steering box through the hydraulic assist cylinder. And you can actually get ported hydro boost units or have them ported. And then I've also heard people running -8 line instead of -6. All my fittings were 6, so I figured 6 would be good enough, but it possibly may need to jump up in size. The first thing we're going to try today is power steering pump. So we have the LS in the truck. Obviously the power steering pump is from the LS. It's a GM Saginaw pump. There's a few things we can do to the pump too. One, increase pressure, and two, increase the flow. So it should be pretty simple, but luckily I have another power steering pump right here that I'm gonna do all my tests on. We're gonna pull it apart, kind of go through that one first, and then if that all looks well, I mean, some of these pumps just have different fittings, different adjustments on one of the valves, so there's a few things that we got to do to this. Let's pull it apart, let's get into it. Once we get this thing apart, I'll show you guys what parts we need to modify, what each piece does, and hopefully this will fix our system, because having a hydro boost unit ported is like $500, $600, $700, and I really don't want to spend that. I don't want to buy a new one that's ported because I already cut up and welded in the correct push rod for my pedal, and it's got all the correct length and everything. I don't want to go through that process again if I don't have to, so hoping this will fix it. Let's tear this one apart and see what we can come up with. All right, here's the three pieces we're working on. We have the main fitting here, we have the flow piston, and then we have the piston spring. So there's a few different modifications that we want to do. You can see the main hole down in there. We're going to drill that out a little bit bigger. They say to go to 5/32 for that hole. So we're going to do that. This spring is about 1 7/8 inches right now in length. They say to stretch that out a little bit to about 2 inches. So we're going to do that. And then most of the modifications are going to be done to this. Now, you can see the tip there where it's screwed in, and you can see that little gap. There's some adjustment there. So a lot of these have a washer in between there. It looks like this one just uses a Loctite on the threads to set that. But what we want to do is bottom that all the way out on, basically crank it down until we can't turn it anymore. And if that doesn't help enough, what we can do is take this out, and there's a little plunger in there. We can get and stick a washer underneath inside down in this bore, and that'll help put a little bit more pressure on the insides of this thing and will help as well. So here's what's inside the piston. Obviously got the piston, there's a spring, there's this little stud, and then a little ball. Like I said, what we can do if screwing this all the way in isn't enough, a lot of people, what they do is down inside the bore here, you stick just a little tiny washer, and that helps put a little more pressure on that spring, I guess. And it helps with upping the pressure. Now, I think by doing just this, we'll bump it up to like 1400 PSI. A lot of people go up to like 1600 with a washer. All right, all these parts are ready to go. We got that drilled out. You can see that nut deal on top is completely flush with that piston. So that's what we want to try first. And then we got that spring extended. So before we swap it and tear it apart, I want to go for a cruise and kind of show you a before and after. I mean, not that you can really see how fast it is, but whatever. We're going to go for a cruise. I'm going to show you what it's doing now, and then we'll swap that out. Hopefully, I'm really hoping that this will help it out. Alright, so you can see, I mean, I can turn this with one finger, no problem. But the problem is that's about as fast as I can turn it. So if you're like, if you were to go into a drift, I don't think you'd be able to save it with what we got right now. So let's hope that those modifications to the pump will help. But like I said, I mean, this thing turns the 40s like it's nothing. Like it's super easy. Just a little bit slow. All right, hopefully you guys got a little bit of an idea of what we're starting with. So power steering pump is right there. You see that main silver line right there. That's what we got to pull off, and then the fitting right there on the pump. There's plenty of room around it. We just got to worry about dripping and losing all of our fluid. So that's kind of why I decided to just modify these parts here. That way we can just pull those ones out, pull and shove these ones in, tighten it down, throw the line back on, and we shouldn't lose a whole lot of fluid. Well, you got to get a little creative when you don't want oil all over your brand new parts. I got some cardboard here, a little tray running down, and a drain pan down there. That should catch the fluid, any fluid that does leak out. I'm not sure how much is going to come out, so I just want to be prepared with what we got going on here. So we're going to pull that out. Like I said, pull the fitting, swap the new one in as fast as we can, and see if that'll work. Well, the cardboard saved my butt. If I had a brain, I would have realized it was gonna drain this entire line plus the entire reservoir. So I was able to save some of it. I got a cup and just a bottle over there, but that saved a lot of oil from going all over my axle, all over the alternator, all over everything. So I'm just gonna let it drip for a little bit just to keep it nice and clean, and then we'll swap that fitting, or swap this all those parts out. All right, we got everything bled. It already feels better. I don't want to speak too soon, but just turning it off the ground, obviously, it's probably gonna feel different, but it already feels better. Let's go see if it did anything. Well, that's not bad. It's a little better. It's definitely a little faster. I do think though, having that hydraulic assist, it does slow it down no matter what you do. I'm sure if you did a PSC pump and everything, it would probably help, but that's not bad. So what I'm going to try now are these washers. I'll probably just put one in there, but They say to use a number 4. I couldn't find a number 4. This is actually a 3mm washer, which I guess are a little bit thinner than the number 4. So kind of tempted to put 2 in, but I don't know. I might just put 1. But I got to pull that piston out, drop one of these in, and put it back together to try that. I highly doubt that's going to make a huge difference. So what I ended up doing, instead of dumping a bunch of money into bigger lines and a ported hydro boost unit and all that, you know, probably end up having to do a bigger pump. What I ended up doing is just buying a 1.5-inch ram. This is 1.75 inch. I think an 1.5 inch ram is going to make a big difference. Like I said, it's not super terrible, so I think just a smaller ram is going to help it a ton. So we'll try the washer first. Like I said, probably not going to do a whole lot. So once we get our ram in, it's just a super simple swap. I just bought the same PSC ram. We'll just unbolt it, bolt the new one in, bleed it, and we'll try that. Alright, so we got that stud ground down. They say it should take about an 1/8 inch off, so we got that shortened up. I'm just gonna do 1 for now. Got 1 shim down in there. So let's get this back together, get it threaded back on, get everything back installed. We'll try it again. If that doesn't do much, obviously we got the ram on the way, so we're gonna try that. Alright, let's go try out the old washer trick. Let's see if this did anything. Honestly, that doesn't feel half bad. There's still some resistance in it. I think that 1.5 inch ram is really gonna help out. But honestly, that made a little bit of a difference. Well, let's go try this thing out. We got our new 1.5 inch ram down there. We got everything bled. Should be good to go. This is what I have. This is an 1.75 inch. So the smallest one PSC actually has is 1.5 inch. It does feel faster with the wheels jacked up. Obviously, once we get them on the ground, that may change, but it feels faster. Let's go try it out. Let's see how it does. All right, that feels better. Let's go, oh yeah, that already feels way better. I think that was a ticket. I think that smaller ram really helped out. I mean, there's a little bit of a lag, but for what this thing is, I think that's gonna work. I mean, you don't really need super fast steering on something like this, but that's definitely way better than it was. Well, that smaller ram definitely made a difference. Now, this isn't still like a factory feeling power steering. It's a little bit slower, which is kind of a given with hydro assist, unless you go through, according to my research anyway, unless you go through and do like a ported hydro boost, a PSC pump, a big reservoir, huge lines. With the 1.5 inch ram, it definitely still has enough power, but it's it's definitely faster than the 1.75 inch. But like I said, it's still just, I mean, you can't really notice it, especially in something like this where you're not like you're not needing super fast steering. It honestly feels better in a truck like this with 40s, having, you know, big tires on it, not having like super twitchy, super responsive steering anyways. But I don't know, I'm happy with it. I think it's gonna work with the mods we did to the pump. That definitely helped out a bit. And then, like I said, downsizing the ram, I think it just gave it that little extra speed, which makes it actually feels really good now. Well, anyways, I'm gonna wrap this one up here, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it. Why don't you go smash that thumbs up button, comment, subscribe. We'll catch you in the next one.